So what's your earliest memory of your mother?
When I was probably about 3 years old or a little over, and I had a sister Ruth that had had her tonsils out, and she had blood poisoning. And the Relief Society teachers, we lived on the very end of the road to nowhere. They come riding horses on side saddles. And they knew Mother was too upset to make me a birthday cake, but it was my birthday. And they made me a spice cake for my mother, and she was so happy that they would come that far to help and take care of us. And that's about the earliest I remember of my mother.
So is a spice cake one of your favorite cakes, or what's your favorite cake?
That's what we had in the house. As I said, we lived 20 miles from town, and we was on the end of the road to nowhere. And so they took whatever we had in the house and they made me the spice cake. It wasn't necessarily my favorite, it was the one that they could make.
Okay.
It wasn't decorated, it was just a plain cake. It had no candles or no frosting.
So how was your sister?
My sister was from May until July, 14 months older than I was. And she was, that day was her last good day. We went out in the yard and we played marbles for a little while, me and my sister. And then she died. I don't remember how soon she died after that.
Okay. So tell me how you met Granddad.
Which, Oliver?
Yeah.
We lived on in Gila, New Mexico, and the 3 C's came into camp.
What are 3 C's?
Conservation Corps.
Okay.
That came and worked for $30 a month and built dams and bridges and improved the country. It was a civilian conservation camp, 3 C's. And we went to the post office to get the mail. We lived 3 miles from the post office, and Lucille was there and I was there. And we went up to get the mail. And Oliver was there, and I looked over at him and he winked at me. And that was the first time I'd ever seen him. And so then we got acquainted then, and then Oliver was a very hard worker. He not only drove the truck for the 3 C camps, but he also, he would bring the laundry from the 3 C's down, and we would do the laundry, and we would make some money. It was really hard times. It was the depth of the Big Depression, you know, when I grew up. And that's the way I met him.
What did that depression teach you?
Well, the Depression taught me to live frugally because we didn't have it. And Oliver's family had been so poor, they could get money for feed for their horses, but they couldn't get money from the government for feed for themselves. So they'd take the bran that they bought for the horses and sift it out and make bread to eat. And they had to live on the wild plants that grew in the fields. And they were very, 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 very poor. Much worse off than we were in New Mexico.
So what's your earliest testimony building spiritual memory? What's your earliest spiritual memory?
I mean, she does like to entertain, and she's very, very good at it.
Hi, Matthew. You brought your bug box. It's a good place to find bugs. They're everywhere here.
Yeah, she's very shy, so that part of her.
Well, we were taught to pray before I ever remember. We didn't have family home evenings, but my family had blessings on the food, always, and they paid their tithing and they went to church on Sunday, and so I grew up. From the time I was fortunate to be born in the church when we was rebuilding the the branch down in Texas. I was the only one in the Relief Society that was born in the church, and that made me an authority, see. I taught them there's your way and my way. They were all converts. Then there's the guidebook way, and unless we have a real reason, we do it like the book tells us, you know. But I can't ever remember when I didn't believe in Heavenly Father and want to sing songs. Sometimes I still remember songs that we sang when I was a little child. Give said the little stream, and those songs that we sang and by the time I was 10 years old, I was teaching the little kids at Sunday school. I had a class of my own outside in the summertime with the 4 or 5 little ones that I was already teaching. So I can't remember when I didn't believe in Heavenly Father and love Him and know that I was His daughter. I can't ever remember that.
What do you remember about the Gila River, and what did you enjoy about living on the Gila River?
Well, the Gila River was my home. I was, as I said, Ruth had died, and I was the oldest one in the family. And then Lucille was little and petite, so she wasn't expected to do anything, of course. But I was always not fat, but a big, strong child. And so it was my job to help take care of the family. It was my job to go check the irrigation. It was my job to go stake the calf out on the grass. It was my job to drive the team if Daddy needed it. Mother taught me how to drive a car. She was the poorest driver in the family, but she taught me how to drive a car. And I didn't feel like that I was had to work. I felt like I wanted to work, and I wanted to help the family in any way that I could. Grandpa Lee, Daddy's father, had moved there, and he had moved about all of his family there. And it was really a patriarchal family. What I mean, if somebody killed a calf, everybody in the family got a piece of meat. We had no refrigeration. If somebody had fruit, everybody got fruit. I love to plant fruit trees, They laughed at me and said, if there's a fence between them, you think you can plant a tree on each side. And I love to garden. Mother gardened and I loved to garden. Mother was a teacher and I always wanted to teach. There was no hopes of me ever going to college because college was 30 miles away and it took money to go to college and there wasn't any money. But everybody helped each other. I remember when we didn't have a cow that was giving milk, and I would take a little, I guess it was probably a gallon bucket, and walk about as far as from where your dad lives, maybe a little farther than that with that bucket, and I'd go down to Grandpa Lee's, and they would give me milk to go on our cereal every day, and I would walk down there and get milk till we had a cow that freshened so we could have milk. And it was a time of growing up, a time of learning right from wrong, and it's still kind of my home.
Mm-hmm.
And my family are buried on the hill above the house we lived in.
What about your home on the Gila? You had a home on the Gila River, didn't you?
Actually, I never did. After I married, I didn't have a home on the Gila River. When Oliver was 65 years old, the railroad forced him to retire. We knew that. And as I said, he had been taught to save, and I had been taught to save, and we prepared for that. So we had two places that we could move, ready to move into. We had 80 acres down at Boyd, Texas. We'd planted fruit trees, and they were in, when we'd go at Christmas time, that was a good time to plant fruit trees. They were in production. We'd had a house moved on it, the land had been leveled, so with grass for the calves, and a pond of water so we could water our garden, and everything was in readiness. We had another place up on the Gila River. It only had 20 acres, but it had 5 acres down in the valley and the rest up on the hill. It had some fruit trees was planted. We'd fixed the house there, had only a 3-room house, but that was big enough for us. And it was ready to move into. And so we debated which one we'd move into. Would we move in the Gila River or would we move in the one in Texas? And we decided, well, after all, you're retiring, and New Mexico was a good place to hunt and fish and go up the mountains, and there was a church, a little branch there. We could go to church if we wanted to, but we weren't too much interested in going to church. It was, we decided, well, we're going to take this little place where we won't be tied down to trying to raise cattle, and if we want a cow, we could have her, but we don't have to have cows and chickens and be tied down. And so we had decided that, and I said to Oliver, I said, maybe we should ask Heavenly Father where He wants us. And he said, well, will you do that? So I knelt down by the couch, and it was a short prayer, and I said, Heavenly Father, we're at the point of retiring, and we want to go where you want us to go. And I stood up, and Uncle Oliver looked at me, and he said, sell the place on the Gila and go to the Texas, didn't he?
If I were developing a house and stuff, no. I would plan the future.
I said he did. And to me, the Lord had spoken. And that was where we were to go. Oliver's testimony was not quite that strong, but we went to, we sold the place. I said he didn't tell us to go down in Texas and see if we liked it and come back. He said sell it. And of course we had the place in El Paso, our home there, that we needed to sell too when
You're welcome.
we retired.
I was thinking of you.
Somebody come to us in Texas and said, we hear you've got a place up on the Gila River you want to sell. We said we do.
I thought it was you.
And he said, I want to buy it.
Screaming for joy.
And we said, well, it's not in very good shape because since we left there, there's been a flood come in there and take out the butane tank and kind of mess up the house and things like that. And he said, give me the key and we'll
No, we're
go.
supposed to pin him.
So they went up and they came back and they said, we'll buy it. Somebody come to us at the house and said, here, you want to sell your house here in El Paso? Yeah. Well, we want to buy it.
This is not
We
good.
went and looked at it. They bought it. And so we moved to Texas. And so we actually didn't have a home on the Gila River except in that sense.
Mm-hmm. So